And it says we are live. Well, how do you do, Buckaroos? I'm Tom the Beer Whisperer. I'm also Tom the Whiskey Whisperer. And I got them both rocking tonight. I've got some Lagunitas down because it was only $7.99 a six pack, if you can believe that. I'm pairing it with some Acres all batch bourbon. It is 90 proof, man. So, hey, I got a special guest here with me. I know him as Erik and Thomas. So you tell me what you want to be known as here.
Excellent. This is ThomasMetal 75. If you search for the YouTube channel, you'll find me doing the Massachusetts Beer Reviews channel of YouTube. And tonight I will be, and I just did a review of it, but because it's such a big beer, I got a little bit left. It is the 2012. That's right, 2012. Barley wine style ale known as the Monster Ale from Brooklyn Brewing Company. 10.1%.
Oh, no shit. I haven't seen that one, man.
10.1% alcohol.
2012. Wow. What was ABV again?
10.1%. And I acquired, I think they came in 6 packs when I bought it. And this was acquired in the month of November of 2013.
So how did that age for you then?
I think it's done pretty good. I think still, I mean, it's a barley wine, so I think still you're getting that characteristic of the 10.1. But for me, in the review that I just did on my channel, I'm getting a lot of that toffee, caramel, molassesy, kind of a sticky sweetness to it. There's definitely
so is it mellowed with age?
A little bit. I still, surprisingly enough, I still think that the 10.1 is pretty predominant, although it's getting a lot of, like I said, those syrupy, sweet notes. Lots of figs, dark fruits, maybe like cherries, and definitely like dark raisins. Again, definitely molasses, kind of a sweetness, and definitely there's that darkly roasted kind of a, maybe like almost like a brown bready kind of a malt character to that one.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah,
so,
not so bad.
Thomas or Erik, I have you listed as both as Erik and Thomas.
Correct. Call me whichever one you want. Thomas is fun.
So let me ask you a question, my friend. Well, I wasn't getting it before, but now so I'm getting an echo.
Okay. I will fix that in a moment.
Hang on just a second. I hope it's me. Anyways, let me ask you a quick question. You and I usually talk together as part of a panel, so it's just you and I tonight, so I'm going to get a little personal. Are you a married or single guy?
Very single.
Very married guy, but that's okay. But the people that watch my channel know I get personal. So the other question I want to ask you is your hat. Tell me about the hat you're wearing tonight.
This hat reminds me of the late and great Lemmy Kilmister from the band Motorhead.
Yes, that's what I was. That's what I was hoping you were going to say.
And if I don't sport the, I got a little bit of. You can't even see it here. I got a little bit of pulled pork and some nacho shells and some cheese to go with this food. But if I don't have the goatee, I can kind of do a Lemmy stash.
There you go.
On occasion on Halloween.
So, do you have a favorite Motorhead tune?
Love Me Like a Reptile from Ace of Spades. There you go.
Very nice. There you go.
Yeah, he was more. Lemmy was more of a Jack and Coke and Marlboro Red kind of guy.
Lemmy was, yeah, very much Jack and Coke. He was legendary in Hollywood at the Rainbow Club for his Jack and Coke drinking.
Playing that video poker on the side of the club. Yep. That's right.
Yeah, he was. Love you. Typically I make fun of people drinking Jack and people, Western with Lemmy. I am not going in that direction, man.
As they say, you know who will win in a fight, Lemmy or God, right? Trick question. Lemmy is good.
Yeah. So I know this is kind of a beer channel, but I think you and I could talk a little music. But
Sure.
my son Seamus learned about Motorhead, oddly enough, through video games, right? So he played a lot of that. I don't know if you played the game, but the game was SXX, and he came across the song Overkill, and he was just was enthralled by that tune. So I took him to a place in town called CD Warehouse, and he picked out several Motorhead discs, and we would just go home and listen to them. But see, I've always been a big music guy. Influenced his taste in it, and I listened to what I listened to. He listened to what he listened to. But every time he would listen to something, try to hear it through his ears. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He would explain to me why he liked the song. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I would rediscover a lot of bands like Motorhead and the New York Dolls and several others when he would discover them through video games. It was very interesting.
Excellent. That's a good place to any place to find good music is a good place to find it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody loved Ace of Spades, but he was really enthralled by the song Overkill.
I've only seen Motorhead once. And I forget when that was, but I must have been 4 rows from the stage. And that legitimately, I make no bones about that, was the loudest concert I've ever been to in my life.
Well, they were known to be very loud, man. That was kind of their shtick, was that they are loud.
Yep. They don't play heavy metal. Lemmy would always say that we're Motorhead and we play rock and roll.
Yeah. Well, but they were kind of the precursor to speed metal, right? Not necessarily heavy metal, but speed metal.
Yeah, they definitely were the ones that influenced Metallica to want to play with a faster paced tempo. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. In fact, I've said in a few videos, I don't know if you've heard it, but I mean, I've been saying this for decades, that I once saw Metallica in a showcase club in Anaheim, California, called the Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
When they were the second of 3 bands, and I remember thinking at the time that this is the worst band that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they were horrible. But to be honest with you, at that time they were nothing more than a Motorhead cover band.
Mm-hmm. That's probably an accurate statement. Yeah,
but they were horrible. I mean, they couldn't sing, they couldn't play. It was awful. And a year later, they had an album out.
Well, yeah, there's no mistaking that Metallica at one point in time was considered alcoholica, doing a little bit too much of here, there, and everything. That might have contributed to some of their, I don't want to say demise in the 80s, but they definitely over the years gotten their act together, where we finally realized as musicians that we don't last forever. Although you got to go ask Slash and what's his name, Keith Richards, how they last forever. Maybe that's the secret of youth, the fountain of youth. Drink from that.
So here's what I got to say about Keith Richards. I remember being about 22 years old and watching Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, and thinking, damn, Keith Richards looks old. Now I'm thinking, much older than he did 30 years ago. I mean, he's always looked old, right? He's just one of those guys. I think he's going to outlive everybody.
They've said like every 6 months or a year he gets blood transfusions, which keeps him alive. I don't know the validity of those stories, but maybe.
I don't know if that's rumor or true, but I hadn't heard that. But hell, I don't know. Whatever the hell he's doing, it seems to be working for him.
I guess. Yes. Just keep smoking. You'll be good.
just keep doing that, Keith. Whatever. Fan though. As long as we're talking about the Stones, how do you feel about the Stones?
Undercover shutdown ale.
Are you a Stones fan, Erik?
A little bit. for me in that time period, I'm probably more of like a Cream and a Mountain kind of fan.
So my generation, anyway, I'm a little bit older than you, so my generation always wants to define the Stones and the Beatles. You seem to have to be one or the other. And for me, I love both of them for different reasons, right? The Beatles were an interesting entity because the Beatles started out as basically a 3-minute pop song band. And I don't think there's any band in history that's ever had the same evolution as the Beatles, that started out as a 3-minute pop song band and became a renowned rock band. Meaning, I mean, name me another band that's done Love Me Do and Revolution in their career. There isn't one. But the Stones are kind of a different kind of band, right? I like the Stones for a different reason, because there's a lot of songs the Stones do I just hate. There really is. But there's a lot of Stones songs that I just think are brilliant, like Tumbling Dice. I think Tumbling Dice is a brilliant tune. The lyrics are brilliant. The music is brilliant. Brown Sugar.
Yeah.
Do Brown Sugar today. If Brown Sugar was written today, it wouldn't be allowed on commercial radio if you listen to the lyrics.
I mean, there's a lot of music in just mainstream rock radio that's kind of trying to do a little bit of that throwback, a little bit of that Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, a little bit more of the bluesy stuff. Like, I think I'm trying to remember the name of the band. Oh my God, they're from Ohio, and the Black Keys. They kind of, I don't know if you heard of that band, but they kind of try to do a little bit of that stuff. But for me, and actually I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine a little bit earlier, and I know you just talked about the Beatles, and you said, who makes another song like Love Me Do, 3 minutes, and it's bang money? And I don't know that I can really answer that question, even though my statement here is going to be that I think that that Cream is more influential across a greater spectrum of rock and roll than just the Beatles were. I think I say that because
actually, I don't disagree with you. Yeah. My point about the Beatles was I don't know of another band that started out as a pop band and became a rock band. But as far as being influential, as far as all the members of the band, like you've got Eric Clapton, you've got Ginger Baker, you've got Jack Bruce. I agree with you 100%. I think they're underrated as far as influence. Yeah, you're exactly right. I agree 100%.
I just think that, like I was saying, I think when you look at rock and roll as being this big, broad genre that could be almost, like we were saying, the Beatles, practically to even just go the opposite extreme, black metal, death metal, thrash metal, something like that. I think that Cream did a lot more to not revolutionize, but I think they did a lot more to influence a broader range of music than the Beatles would have. Somebody like
you know what? I don't disagree with that. No, I don't disagree with that at all. Again, you've got Eric Clapton, arguably one of the greatest guitar players of all time. You've got Ginger Baker, arguably one of the greatest rock drummers of all time. You've got Jack Bruce, one of the greatest voices and rock bass players of all time. Yeah, you have a point.
Yeah.
Argument for all of that. I agree.
I mean, I think that I'm trying to think about the Beatles here. I think that George Harrison and probably it has to be Paul McCartney, right? Those are probably the most prolific songwriters that they had in that band. But I just feel
you're forgetting John Lennon, who was probably the most prolific, but yeah.
Yeah, I am forgetting him. I guess on purpose. But
But yeah, John Lennon. John Lennon was the heart of the band.
I just keep. I said this a little bit earlier. I mentioned Cream and I mentioned Mountain on purpose because I feel like maybe not so much Mountain,
Leslie West.
probably not even, but they don't call him the Mountain of Tone for nothing. But I just seem to think that, at least as Cream is concerned and Clapton is concerned, and maybe, I guess, certain parts of the Beatles, right? But I guess I think of Cream as just kind of being having a broader spectrum as far as their influence was concerned, because I think as the Beatles kind of influenced a lot of different kinds of music that maybe not even was just rock and roll related, I feel like Cream can influence really, really just generic kind of rock and roll to really, really, really extremely heavy stuff. And I feel like, sure, the Beatles kind of have that songwriting capability where everybody can take something from them. I feel like just their musicianship and Cream just kind of took it up a notch a little bit, where everybody can take something from that and kind of, even if you're not all just about, here's a simple, way to write a song, here's a simple way to write a song, but here's a way to, do something inside of the song that's kind of really interesting and unique. And I understand that when you listen to music, it's not all about, let's see how many notes we can play and how fancy we can play things, but sometimes that's kind of cool. But then again, I know a lot of people would rather not just hear somebody play a solo for the sake of, oh, well, I know how to play the guitar, let me just solo. But I think that's what they did really well. And that's what Yes did really well.
But it depends on what you're talking. If you're talking about lyrically, I think you have to say. I think you got to mention John Lennon. I think you got to talk about. I think you even have to talk about George Harrison. And personally, I think George Harrison was a better lyricist than he gets credit for.
Freddie Mercury.
If you're talking about music and just music without the lyrics, I agree with your Cream assessment. But if we're talking about lyrics, if we're talking about meaning, 60s in general, no, I don't think you can dismiss what the Beatles did.
I think the best. I mean, I say that a lot about Cream, and I give them a lot of credit, but I think for me, the best band out of England is probably Queen. And
really? No, why? I have my opinions about Cream, but I want to hear what.
Yeah, I think they're the total. I mean, I say that about Cream, but I think that Queen is the total package. They got one of the best frontmen of all time. As you were talking about with lyrics, I think Cream. I think Queen does a tremendous amount with the vocals. I think they have just that sound. When you hear it, it's unmistakable. When you hear Brian May play that guitar, and you hear those thunderous drums of Roger Taylor, you just automatically know that's going to be Cream. You automatically know some stadium on Sunday where the Jaguars are going to get destroyed by the Patriots. It's going to be Cream, or Cream. It's going to be either Queen or We'll Rock You Queen. There you go. You just know that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course, the football analogies aside, I mean, Freddie Mercury's voice was unmistakable, right? Very few rock vocalists had the range that Freddie Mercury had. I mean, Brian May, we could talk about talent of a lot of guitar players, but very few had an unmistakable sound that he had. Yep. Even John Deacon on bass was a bass player. I mean, the band was a total package. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when
while you're eating, Eric, let me ask you a question. So my band, growing up, so as youngsters, we all listened to some bubblegum, some pop. We're kids, right? We're growing up.
Yeah.
But at some age, we listen to serious rock and roll, and we say, "Damn, I ain't listening to that crap anymore." For me, the band was Aerosmith, and I was 10 years old, and the album was Toys in the Attic. What was that album for you?
Holy crap! Well, my albums. are not from my time period. But in the 90s,
what was that album that changed? What was that album when we went from a kid to being a rock and roll guy?
Holy crap. Well, I can tell you definitively, and this must have been, oh my God. Again, this was not from my time period, but I had this cassette. You're going to know what I'm talking about here. I had this cassette tape. It was in 1995 on this little yellow Walkman boombox. Every day in first grade, I would put this cassette on, side 2, and I'd be listening to the Beat It song by Michael Jackson, and all of a sudden Eddie Van Halen comes on, and that kind of changed me a little bit. And I know it's like 15 years later, but I didn't know who that guy was that was playing that solo, and that's kind of what really did it for me, to be completely honest. That's pretty cool. I remember my father actually, strange enough, dichotomy here, listening to a lot of Clapton, and he had the that Unplugged album, which kind of did something along those lines, kind of getting me into different kinds of music. The Crossroads cassette, which was the greatest hits of Bon Jovi, and I guess at that time period, the Dookie album by Green Day. Go figure. And then when I heard the Metallica Black album, that kind of did it for me. That got me into more heavy stuff.
So what is your go-to feel-good music right now?
My favorite, I just got to say this one, because it predates me a little bit, but my favorite band is Rush. Yeah.
Really?
Plain old Rush. You can't beat that. Can't beat that for musicality.
Tell me why. Tell me why Rush.
Again, you cannot beat that for musicality. As a musician, I play guitar and drums and keyboard, and I can't think of anywhere else to go if you want to learn about drums, keyboard, and bass than Rush right there. Unless maybe you want to listen to some Yes, that would be a good place to go.
A little bit. If I play devil's advocate with you a little bit,
yeah,
I would say there are very few bands that are more technically proficient as Rush, but they don't have that musical feel about them. How would you answer that question? They're very technical, but they don't have a lot of they don't have that feel. How would you?
Yeah, I think it's the same way that you can look at a band like Cream, where what they used to do when they played live is every time they play live, the solo is different. So what would happen is they kind of would know when to go into a solo, and they would just kind of have that musicality and that musical background to them where they can go and look at each other and go, okay, we're going to come out of the solo and we're going to go back into the song. And I feel like Rush is almost kind of in that same way where I think they have the musicality where they can really write really good chord progressions and really integrate good songwriting into what they do. They have, sure, it's not necessarily about how many notes you can play and how fast you can do it, right? But I feel like it's the total package of, I feel like they know how to construct really good songs, and I feel like they can do a lot of the really good solo work and stuff. But when it comes down to it, I think what I think is really great about Rush is that it's a joint effort between 3 members of that band. Everybody does something really, really well, and without each of those individual members, that band wouldn't have sounded the way that it did unless those people brought what they did and what they know how to do into that band's sound.
You make a good point. Actually, I've seen Rush 3 times live over my years. But yeah, you make a good point. For me, that band, to be honest with you, one that I want to go back to right now has changed several times over the years as I've gotten older. For a moment in time, I'd have to say it's Thin Lizzy, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think Phil Lynott is an underrated bass player.
Yeah,
I think he's an underrated vocalist. You had Gary Moore in there. You had some other things going on, and I liked them as a younger man, to be honest with you. But as I listen to them now as an older man, the lyrics make more sense to me. The music makes more sense. I hear a lot of the progressions that I didn't hear earlier. As a kid, I like the way that song sounds. But as an older guy, I've listened to the song going, oh, damn, now I see. Now I see what they were trying to do there.
I can't argue with that. Nope. I'm with you on that. They're kind of like.
I agree with you on Rush. You agree with me on Thin Lizzy. We're on the same page, brother.
You know what? I had a buddy of mine, because my brother is huge on Thin Lizzy, and I had a buddy of mine, and that reminds me of the same thing, okay. like with ZZ Top. I had a buddy of mine that used to describe ZZ Top as they didn't mean to influence heavy metal, but they just kind of did. And I think that Thin Lizzy
did. You know what? You're exactly right. Yeah.
They do a lot of things that bands from the 80s and in the late 70s, even like maybe not like a Van Halen as much, but maybe like a Scorpions or something like that, or like a Judas Priest or something like that, where I think Thin Lizzy was a really great example of what you can do when you have two guitar players in your band, and where they're not just playing the same thing, but they're playing off of each other, and they're making this thing just sound massively huge, which is awesome.
Well, I mean, Thin Lizzy, like Aerosmith was one of the early ones too that had two guitar players. But Thin Lizzy did things that weren't done before. That a lot of casual listeners missed, but they were influential to other bands.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Thomas, let me ask you a question: are you done drinking, or you want to have another beer?
I'm gonna finish this barley wine. I think that's gonna round out the evening.
All right, then. Well, we'll just call it a day for this video. Then, if you want to have another beer, I'd keep talking.
Excellent. Yeah, I did rate. I'm trying to remember here. I rated. I think I rated this one an 80 out of 100. I mean, this is pretty. If you like barley wines, and you can actually, when I found the beer, it was already discontinued, but that was in 2013. I think, as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think the beer does age much better over time, and the alcohol percentage. And a barley
wine should, to be honest with you, a barley wine really should age well.
And this alcohol percentage does taper off a little bit. I still think it's pretty well pronounced in that. And if you like, I can't even really. I mean, I guess maybe if I had to guess, between like a British style of an barley wine or like an American, I would guess it's maybe more on that American side, just being a little bit more on the bitter side of things. But if you like that really big, bold alcohol hit to it, more of that sweet note and more of those darker fruits and almost like a syrupy kind of a sweetness, this is probably one to try. And I mean, 2012, this probably be good 10 years later, I bet. Absolutely. Age even finer.
Hey, man, it was a pleasure talking beer and music with you. We're going to end this live session. I am Tom the Beer Whisperer. This is Erik. Do you have a moniker you want to use, man? You got a tagline you want to add?
We got
or something.
This is ThomasMetal 75. This is the Massachusetts Beer Reviews channel of YouTube. And as I finish off most of these beer reviews, I like to say, keep tasting those great beers. Cheers. We'll see you soon.
And I always say, I am Tom the Beer Whisperer. I am Tom the Whiskey Whisperer. BeerVangelist, Whiskey Evangelist, prolific beer drinker, prolific whiskey drinker, purveyor of wisdom, and all-around good guy. Although recently I've been adding in righteous dude because I just like the way that sounds.
Nice.
And I'm a child of the 80s, so, you know, Spicoli and all that. Hey, we'll talk to you later. Hey, thanks, Thomas, for joining me.